Hello, everyone. I am the Power 10, and tonight we delve into a case that shook the heart of Oklahoma, a story that haunts the memories of those who were there, and still chills the bones of those who hear it for the first time. This is the tale of the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders. On the night of June 13, 1977, three young girls, ages 8 to 10, set out on a routine camping trip in the heart of the Okmulgee State Park in Oklahoma. It was supposed to be a weekend of laughter, friendship, and the simple joy of nature. But instead, it would become one of the most disturbing crimes in American history. The Girl Scouts of America are synonymous with trust, friendship, and adventure. In this small-town park, nestled within Oklahoma's woods, the innocence of a summer night was supposed to remain untouched. But for three girls, Denise Milner, Lori Farman, and Michelle Goose, this trip would be their last. Together with their troop, they set up camp in an area they believed to be safe, under the guidance of their camp counselor, Gene Leroy Hart, a man with a past darker than anyone could have imagined. Gene Leroy Hart. A name that would soon be linked to horror. A man who had escaped from prison, living in the shadows of the very woods the girls camped in. He was a known rapist and had been convicted for the abduction and assault of two women years earlier. Yet, somehow, he was free. And on that night, Hart would do something that would forever scar the community. By the following morning, the camp was silent. The usual sounds of children waking up and packing away their tents never came. Instead, the air was thick with a haunting stillness. When the camp counselor arrived at the campsite, what she found was beyond comprehension. The girls were gone. An immediate search began, and hours later, the bodies of Denise Milner, Lori Farman, and Michelle Goose were found. Their bodies were discovered just a short distance from the camp, hidden under brush and trees, their young lives brutally taken. The details of their deaths were grisly. They had been raped, strangled, and left in the woods to rot, murdered by someone who had stalked them with horrifying precision. The brutality of the crime left an entire state in shock. But there was one chilling fact that kept authorities up at night: the murderer was still out there. Authorities were quick to suspect Gene Leroy Hart. He had been living in the nearby woods, hiding out after his escape from prison. His violent criminal history, combined with his proximity to the crime scene, made him the prime suspect. But the investigation into his role was far from simple. Despite circumstantial evidence linking Hart to the crime, such as footprints near the campsite, a witness who claimed to have seen him in the area, and his strange behavior during questioning, Hart denied any involvement. And there was something more unsettling. At the time, the evidence against Hart was largely circumstantial. No physical evidence, no murder weapon, no witnesses directly tying him to the murders. Gene Leroy Hart went to trial, but in a strange twist, despite being the most likely suspect, he was acquitted. The jury found the evidence insufficient, and Hart walked free, leaving the town of Muskogee haunted by what might have been. Gene Leroy Hart's acquittal did nothing to ease the terror. For years, the case remained unsolved, leaving a community scarred and a family torn apart. Was Hart truly guilty? Or was there someone else in those woods, lurking in the shadows, waiting for another opportunity? For decades, the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders remained an enigma. Some believed Hart's guilt was undeniable. Others pointed to the lack of solid evidence as proof of his innocence. And yet, the lingering question remained: who could do such a thing to three innocent children? Gene Leroy Hart lived out his final years in freedom, never admitting to the crime. In 1979, he was convicted of kidnapping and raping two other women. He was later sentenced to prison, but died of a heart attack in 1979, before he could face any charges related to the Girl Scout murders. His death left many unanswered questions. To this day, no one has been convicted for the murder of Denise Milner, Lori Farman, and Michelle Goose. The case remains cold, and the truth remains shrouded in darkness. The unsolved mystery of the Oklahoma Girl Scout murders is a dark chapter in history, one that continues to echo, unanswered, through time. It reminds us of how deeply violence can shatter the lives of innocent families and communities, leaving wounds that never truly heal. Yet, not all tragic cases are mysteries. Some are painfully clear, with answers that only deepen the heartbreak. From the unanswered questions of the Girl Scout murders, we now turn to a different kind of tragedy, the story of the Dawson family in Baltimore, Maryland. Unlike the haunting silence of an unsolved crime, the Dawson case is marked by a horrifying certainty, a tale of courage, retaliation, and systemic failure that claimed the lives of a family who simply wanted a better future. In October 2002, East Baltimore was a neighborhood in crisis, plagued by crime, drug trafficking, and poverty. For years, families living in this area struggled to navigate daily life while surrounded by the realities of open-air drug markets, violence, and systemic neglect. It was in this setting that Angela and Carnell Dawson were raising their 5 children, 14-year-old Keith, 12-year-old Carnell Jr., 10-year-old LaWanda, 9-year-old Juan, and 8-year-old Kevin. The Dawsons were a close-knit family who valued love, community, and perseverance. Angela Dawson, the matriarch, was a force to be reckoned with, a strong-willed woman who refused to accept the crime and danger that threatened her family. She believed in standing up for what was right, even when it meant putting herself in harm's way. Her husband, Carnell, a hard-working and devoted father, supported her every step of the way. Together, they dreamed of creating a safe and nurturing environment for their children, a dream that became increasingly difficult to achieve as their neighborhood deteriorated around them. Angela's determination to protect her family and improve her community often put her at odds with the drug dealers who operated on her block. She was not one to stay silent, and her voice became a powerful symbol of resistance. Angela frequently called the police to report illegal activities, confronting dealers directly and making it clear that she would not tolerate their presence near her home. While her actions were courageous, they also made her a target. Drug dealers saw Angela not just as a nuisance but as a threat to their operations. Her defiance sent a message to others in the neighborhood, inspiring some but angering those whose livelihoods depended on the very activities she fought against. Over time, the tension between Angela and the local criminal element escalated. Threats against the Dawson family became more frequent and more severe. Rocks were thrown through their windows, their home was vandalized, and ominous warnings were whispered throughout the neighborhood. Despite this, Angela stood firm. She believed that backing down would only embolden those who sought to intimidate her, and she was determined to set an example for her children by showing them the importance of standing up for what is right. Carnell, though aware of the danger, stood by her side, sharing her resolve to fight for a better future. But as the threats intensified, the Dawsons found themselves increasingly isolated. Neighbors, fearful of retaliation, were reluctant to offer support. The police, though aware of Angela's reports and the growing tension, failed to provide the family with adequate protection. This lack of intervention left the Dawsons vulnerable, a family standing alone against the pervasive violence of their environment. The situation reached a horrifying climax in the early hours of October 16, 2002. Darrell Brooks, a 21-year-old drug dealer who had clashed with Angela on multiple occasions, decided to send a final and brutal message. Enraged by her continued defiance, Brooks took a canister of gasoline and approached the Dawson family's row house on Preston Street. Under the cover of darkness, he doused the front porch with gasoline and set it alight. The fire spread quickly, engulfing the home in minutes. Angela and Carnell were jolted awake by the blaze, and in those frantic moments, their only thought was for their children. Angela and Carnell managed to escape the flames initially, making it outside, but when they realized their 5 children were still trapped inside, they did not hesitate. In an act of unimaginable courage, they ran back into the inferno in an attempt to save their children. Tragically, none of the children survived. The tales of these 2 murders will forever haunt our thoughts, and our condolences and prayers are to all of those who have lost family due to violence.